Good morning, and welcome to beautiful Campbell River. Thank you for joining us here this morning. I'm Norm Facey, the proud BC Liberal candidate for the North Island. Today I have with me my teammate Helen Poon from Mid-Island Pacific Rim. And we're just so happy to see everyone here. And what an incredible job with the trucks. Thank you, everybody. I'm amazed to be standing here in the North Island riding, in a riding where the NDP MLA could not be bothered to show up for the first 6 months last year when we needed her. Amazed that when a North Island group went down and parked in front of Parliament, she still couldn't be bothered to walk out the front door. And neither could the Forestry Minister, and neither could the Premier of British Columbia. And yet, here I stand for the second time in 30 days, introducing the BC Liberal leader and the next Premier of British Columbia, Andrew Wilkinson. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Norm. And thank you for coming out. So let's just get started with the easy part. Does anybody here know how to drive a truck? We need some folks tooting the horns to say yes. Well, I'm glad that somebody knows how to drive a truck. So this part of the world is pretty dear to my heart, because when I finished my medical training, the first job I had as a young doctor was to come to the Alder Clinic in 1985 here in Campbell River, and I worked over a period of 3 years at the Alder Clinic and in the hospital. It was great. The economy was roaring along, Elk Falls was operating full tilt, and this was a place where young people came to get ahead, and there was real opportunity right here in Campbell River, and of course the whole North Island. You got to know the area, and I've traveled and fished and visited everywhere in this part of the country, from Gold River up to Cayucot, up to Holberg, Port Alice, Port Hardy, Port McNeil, Wass, Sayward. Anybody been to those towns? Anybody know those towns? There's a real vitality in this part of the world. You know what it's like. You are probably the best operators in coastal forestry anywhere in the world. Does that sound familiar? And you're proud of what you do. You know what you're doing. And those towns that we've just named off have been the core of coastal forestry in British Columbia for over 100 years. It's still a thriving industry. We're talking on the way down here about how this truck is headed up to Butte Inlet next week. What's it going to do? It's going to continue operating the coastal forest industry, which is your area of expertise. But there have been some problems we know about. Last year, and into earlier this year, we had an 8-month strike at Western. Most of you felt that hard. If you're in Port McNeil, you watched coffee shops shut down permanently. You watched people's trucks get towed away. You watched people lose their homes. And what did the NDP do for that 8 months? They did nothing. Because they couldn't be bothered to pay attention to these communities. They couldn't be bothered to come out to the meetings. And how many of you were at that meeting with Claire Trevena that made it onto YouTube? We were talking about that on the way down here. It was an embarrassment when the elected MLA for the North Island, where the beating heart of this economy is coastal forestry, could say nothing more than, yes, I hear you, I'll go and ask my boss in Victoria. If you're like me, you look at her and you say, your job is to stand up for a community. Your job is to represent everybody in the community, whether they voted for you or not. And what did Claire Trevena do? She walked away. She basically said, you're going to have to figure this out for yourself. That is so fundamentally wrong when your elected representative can't be bothered to show up to talk on your behalf. And did she do anything in Victoria? Nothing happened. So you folks, rightfully, got a little fed up. And you went to Victoria. You took your trucks down to Victoria, February 18th of this year, and you said, enough is enough. You circled the legislature. You showed them that you're proud of what you do. You showed them the investment you make in these massive machines to do the work you do. And what happened? Claire Trevena wouldn't come out to see you. The Minister of Forests wouldn't come out to see you. They were having a cabinet meeting in that building to the west of where you were parked. And they sat there and looked out the windows and were too embarrassed to come out and say hello. That is just plain wrong. Does anybody here with a horn in their truck agree that's just plain wrong? Does anybody with a horn agree that they're really good at what they do? Does anybody in the trucks with a horn think that you're actually pretty darn good at what you do and you expect to be treated with respect? Because that's what this boils down to, folks. You are good at what you do. You are voters in the North Island. You are entitled to be treated with respect so that you can get on with your work. And sadly, under the NDP, whether it's the Western Strike or the interior forestry industry, they have basically abandoned forestry. They come up with nice titles like revitalization. They talk about transition. You know what that means? That means transition to unemployment. And let's talk about the interior industry for a minute. 45 mills have had temporary or permanent shutdowns in the last 16 months. 12 mills have closed permanently. You know what that means? If you live in Vavenby, Chasm, Isle Pierre, Mackenzie, 100 Mile, it's over. Your house is worthless. Your truck, you might be selling at an auction for 30% of what you paid for it. And what have the NDP done about that? They have basically walked away from the interior forest industry. They refuse to go to those towns. They just said, you're going to have to figure this out yourself. And that comes back to this issue of what you need from a government. Government is supposed to represent you. Government takes $66 billion out of your pockets. Divide that by the number of people in BC, that's $13,000 for every single person standing here, and every kid and every senior. That's your money. Their job is to invest it with your approval. It's not to take your tax money and walk away and say you're just going to have to sort this out yourselves. So that's where we come back to this point. You need to be treated with respect by your MLA. You need to be treated with respect by your government because we believe in you. Our party, the BC Liberal Party, represents the entire interior forest industry. There are no NDP MLAs with any significant forest industry in their ridings in the interior. We want to represent you in Victoria because we know how forestry works. Any horns on that one? So there are a few more things going on. We've put out a platform. There's a full page on forestry. And we have said it's time to make sure this industry is viable for the long run. We can't have a government that makes us the highest cost producer in North America when we used to be the lowest cost producer. That's a government issue. We can't have a government that only changes stumpage quarterly rather than monthly like they do in Alberta. And their excuse is, oh, it'll annoy the Americans. Well, Alberta does it, so why don't we do it here? There's a big lag that causes all kinds of cash flow problems in the industry. And speaking of the Americans, you might remember John Horgan, about 2 days after he got sworn in as Premier in 2017, said he was going to go to Washington, D.C. and solve the softwood lumber agreement. We solved that dispute twice. I was part of the team that solved it in 2005. And what did he do? He flew down to Washington, D.C. already, went to visit his union buddy friend and picked up a check for $375,000 and got the plane back and had nothing to do with softwood lumber, and you paid his airfare. And then he had the gall to turn around and ban big union donations after he'd come home with the big check. So we've got to think about who's looking out for you, who's standing up for you, who's the person who's going to represent you. And I say that person is standing right here, Norm Facey. And if you happen to come from Cumberland or Royston or farther down the island, that's Helen Poon. So let's be pretty clear about this. You're under constant threat now. People are always meddling in your affairs. We're talking about on the drive up here from the airport. There are too many voices out there, and the NDP are listening to them, saying that what you do is basically a bad thing. That you're not the right kind of people because you're involved in a resource industry. We could not disagree with that anymore. Because what you do is a sustainable industry that will keep going for centuries if it's properly managed by this government. But you need a government that actually gets forestry, that actually thinks about forestry as a vital industry in British Columbia, that's an industry we're proud of. And that's what I come back to every time. We go and meet people around the province, and I look at them and I think of the work they do. You know, we were talking about this truck, a 1970 Kenworth. Bought it when he was 26 years old. Where's that man? Where'd he go? There he is, Dennis. So this is the truck, and he said, well, you must have had some debt problems. And he said, a few months after he bought it, guess what? Strike at Elk Falls, no income. This is a problem. So for a couple of months, he was borrowing grocery money from his father-in-law because he was so much in love with his truck, he couldn't let it go. But he persevered. He's had this truck for 36 years now? 37 years, because he believed in the industry. He believed in himself. He believed you're good at what you do. And he knew that with the industry all around this area for 150 miles in all directions, there would be work if there was a government that believed in Dennis. And that's what you need, is a government that believes in you. So I got to tell you, when you come to a town like Campbell River, where I spent so much time, you get a kind of feeling that you guys are not only good at what you do, I'm proud to be here with you. I'm not ashamed to say I know people in the resource industries. That's the NDP think. I'm not ashamed to say that you guys are people I get along with and understand. I'm proud of what you do. And you need to be proud of what you do. And we need to make the difference in Victoria by getting out there and saying to people in British Columbia, there's a better way to do this. There's a respectful way to do this. A way that doesn't put people in, like the NDP do, into their us and them categories. They even put out a document to their candidates saying, these are the good people and these are the bad people. What kind of government does that? What kind of people think that? That there are bad people in your community who have to be shunned and told that they're not valuable. We believe in helping everybody in British Columbia. Everybody deserves to be treated with respect. And that comes around to this election. This election was totally unnecessary. John Horgan called this for his ambition only. There was a stable arrangement with the Green Party. It would have gone on for another year. We would have gotten through the lump of COVID because we all know it's coming this winter. But he decided for his own selfish reasons to try and promote himself with an election this fall. That's why we're here today. And part of that story is our economy's in trouble. You guys are doing okay right now. We hope you continue to do okay. If you're selling groceries, if you're selling bicycles, you're doing just fine. But you probably know people who are running these fishing lodges, fishing guides, pilots. They're all unemployed, and they will be unemployed until next year at least. There are 150,000 people in British Columbia in tourism and hospitality who don't have any work, and some of them haven't seen a nickel of income since March. We got to look out for those folks. There was a survey out the other day saying that 1 out of 4 small businesses in BC expects to close their doors permanently in the next 12 months. That's a crisis, folks. And yet in this election, we hear nothing from the NDP about what they can do for small business. And you know why? Because to the NDP, small business are part of the enemy. They're part of the people who get up every morning and put it together themselves. They're the people who go into their shop or into their consulting service or into a mechanic's shop and say, here's another day. I got $1,000 in overhead to pay. I hope somebody comes in, and I'm going to have to earn my way every single day. Most of you are contractors. You know what that feels like. You win the bid, you're on cloud nine. It's going to be good. We got work for the next while. You lose the bid, and you go home and think, I better just pull myself together. I better find that energy. I better find the strength to keep going in a small business. That is exactly the energy that we feel from you. That spirit of being the entrepreneur. That spirit of saying, I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it well. We believe in that spirit in British Columbia, which is why we've come up with a really bold plan to get this economy going again and keep it moving. We start right off the bat with let's get rid of provincial sales tax for a full year. Anybody like that idea? So if you go and buy a $2,300 tire to put on this Kenworth truck, that's $160 in PST you save right there. You go and buy a $50,000 trailer, that's $3,500 of money that stays in your pocket so you can buy more stuff and keep things going and employ people. You can go into Kenworth and buy some parts if you feel like it with that extra money. That's what we've got to do, is stimulate this economy. And saving money by having zero provincial sales tax is great for driving people to invest. It means that you'll go out and buy some things you otherwise wouldn't have. It's great for keeping people employed. And what the media seem to be missing is the people at the lower end of the incomes. They're the ones who benefit most from getting rid of sales tax. It's a really good thing to help people at the struggling end of the story, because the information that's coming out is that people who have been most badly affected by the COVID recession are women with lower incomes in small companies. They need a helping hand. And there's another thing we've been talking about which will affect a lot of you. Small business income tax, 2%. That's like $10,000 on a $500,000 income for a business. We say abolish it. Let you reinvest in your company. Let these guys go and buy tires. And talking of tourism and hospitality, you've got a lot more around here than you might realize. You know, I've been out in the fishing lodges here. You've been out in the boats. Those organizations are all in desperate shape. So we have said they're going to need some bridge financing through the winter to keep them alive. We cannot watch this entire beautiful part of the world and its tourism industry just collapse because they don't have any income this year. That's an important role for government to keep the tourism industry going. That's part one of what needs to be done as a bold plan. Part two is focused very much on people. Anybody here sick and tired of being told by ICBC you got no choice, pay or get out of here? We have said ICBC's a bit of a dinosaur. Sure, let's keep it for no-fault insurance, but introduce some competition. If you're looking for auto insurance for one of these trucks or for a taxi or for anything else, why can't there be competition? Give you a choice. You'll be able to say, well, I like this coverage over here and it's a cheaper package, or maybe I want this other coverage over here which is a little more expensive. I'm going to make my own decision. You don't go into the supermarket and you have one choice of toothpaste. You don't go into the supermarket and have one box of cereal, take it or leave it, and here's the price from ICBC. That's what they've done to us, and it's high time you were treated with the respect as a consumer to say, I'm going to make my own choice about auto insurance. Anybody like that idea? And there's another thing we're going to do. If we're lucky enough to form government, there's going to be a big investment in infrastructure. Bridges, hospitals, schools. These are the things we need to keep our society going, and they employ people at good wages for years to come. The NDP have got a problem with this because if you think about it, for the last 30 years, we've had 13 years of NDP government. Guess how many hospitals they built in 13 years in government? 0. I worked at the old Campbell River Hospital. You've got a brand new $315 million Campbell River Hospital and a brand new Courtenay Hospital for another $315 million because the BC Liberals do what they say they'll do. We built, in 16 years, 14 new hospitals in British Columbia. because we get stuff done. And there's another area we got to talk about, and that's on the social side of things. We can't let people down as we go into this recession, and all these tens of thousands of people are going to face unemployment this winter. We've got to get them through this. So we've talked about a very affordable childcare plan, especially directed at women in the workforce so they aren't stuck at home because they can't afford childcare and they can't get back in the workforce. We're talking about affordable childcare for everybody. Family income under $65,000, $10 a day. Under $90,000 in the household, $20 a day. That's the way to ensure we got a maximum mobilization of our workforce and people got a smile on their face because they can earn a living. Because you know what it's like when it's going well, when you come back from Butte Inlet and you got a big paycheck in your hand, that feels good. When you don't have any income, it just corrodes who you are. It hurts. It makes it feel like maybe there'll never be another one. So we've got to make sure that everybody in our society feels like they're going to have the chance to get ahead. We're going to take care of our seniors. The safest place for seniors is not in an institution. The safest place for seniors is living in their own home with the dignity and comfort and security they've got right there, because it's the safest place to be. And we've said we'll have a big tax credit program for seniors. And we're going to talk about drugs. When I was working here in Campbell River, we all knew in the clinic there are a few people in town who are dependent on prescription drugs. No secret to anybody in town, or to you. But we've got this big problem going on of a growing pool of people who are addicted to narcotics. And we say, and my medical background says, there's a better way, folks. We've got to treat the causes. We've got to find ways to avoid people getting onto heavy-duty drugs in the first place. You've all probably had workplace injuries. You go to the doc, you go to the hospital if it's urgent, you get your fracture set or whatever, you got some pain, you get some meds for it. That's totally appropriate. What we can't do is have people staying on heavy drugs from the doctors indefinitely. 49 US states have a prescription monitoring program where you reach a certain level, maybe it's after 3 or 6 weeks, you get referred to specialty care to get you off the drugs. You don't get left on the drugs indefinitely and find yourself starting to think about street drugs as a backup. That's a big problem, and we can do better in that regard. And we have to have a way to get people off drugs. If it's your sister, your mom, your daughter addicted to narcotics, treat this as a person. Say to them, we love you. We want you to get off drugs. So we need a much stronger program to get people off drugs in British Columbia. Anybody like that idea? So that's what we're talking about. We could go on all morning, but we need to be bold. We need to make decisions. We need to drive British Columbia into the future. We need to give you that sense of optimism and purpose. We need to say, let's get this done. We're actually really, really good at this. Look at the skills in this parking lot, folks. I mean, if there's an earthquake, I want to be with you guys because you know how to run the world. So let's gather those skills. Think about what we can do as a society. Look at each other and say, we need to be in charge of our world. So what do you need to do about it? There's an election next Saturday. The advance polls are open today. You have a choice. You can guide your future. You can elect a government that respects you and supports you and says, what can we do to clear the path to make your life easier? Or you can elect the NDP, who are going to come to you and say, don't call us, we'll call you, just like Claire Trevena did. You have a choice. So what we've got to do, folks, is get out and vote. You can vote any day in the next 10 days. If you've got one of those mail-in ballots, you can mail it in this weekend because they have to be received by Elections BC by next Saturday. You can wait till next Saturday to go to the general polling and vote. But for goodness sake, get out and vote. Get all your family out to vote. Talk to your friends. You can say to them, this isn't just, I don't know, kind of a, is he a nice guy or not? This is about the future for you and your kids. And whether you want to grab that future, whether you want to be proud of what you do, whether you want to be moving into retirement and handing on the business to your kids, or whether you want to just see it all wind down and feel that sense of loss that you're going to see when you're told what you do isn't good enough anymore. Forget that noise right now. You're really good at what you do, and we want you to succeed, and a BC Liberal government will make that happen. Thank you for being here. We can do this, folks, but it means you've got to do it. I can do so much of this, but the whole purpose is for you to go home and think, I'm going to make some phone calls. I'm going to talk to my kids. I'm going to talk to my brother-in-law. He's a bit of a pain in the neck, but I'll talk to him anyway. It's important for you to get out there and mobilize now. That's why we gathered here today. I thank you for coming. It's great to see everybody showing up with, what's the guesstimate on the equipment cost here? 7 million? Reasonable guess, yeah. So get back in that $300,000 tractor trailer. Pull that $60,000 trailer and start to think how much you could save on PST. 7% off everything for a year. That's what we want you to focus on. That's what you can tell your brother-in-law. And if your brother-in-law has any sense at all, they'll say, hey, that sounds great. So let's get out there and vote, folks. Let's make a difference. Let's be proud of who we are and make the North Island successful in the future. Have a great day. Thanks, guys.